Hey guys, thanks for joining us on our first morning session, our first management session here at Cloud Connection Summit 2020. I'm very proud to be joined by Mark Lovey, CEO of Datagate Innovation America, one of our new integration partners. We also have Jay McBain from Forrester Research and Joe Cram from Solid Networks. Before we get started in this session, Mark Levies, why don't you tell us a little about Datagate and what you.
Thank you, Ray. Datagate's really thrilled to be here as a sponsor today, and thrilled to be working with OITVOIP. We specialize in billing for MSPs. Our product is focused on MSPs, so we integrate with ConnectWise, QuickBooks, Xero, all the best tax engines for telecom. So we're designed to make things easy and quick for you to build telecom and spend more time selling and less time on rekeying things and administrative things. So we're keen to talk with you, and thank you for having us here today.
Awesome. Very happy to have you, man. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us this session. So we are going to get started on the session. This session, we're going to be talking about trends in the channel, right? Tomorrow's MSP, and no better to talk about this is Jay McBain, principal analyst at Forrester Research. The trends that happen, the insights that happen, reading the tea leaves. Forrester's world renowned for this. Jay is the guy that finds this stuff for the channel. He's the one that understands this. It's one of the most widely visible and respected thought leaders in the channel. He was named top 40 under 40 by Business Review. He's been in countless magazines and influencer lists. The guy is the person that we should be listening to. And alongside him, we have Joe Cram, CEO of Solid Networks, decent sized MSP out of California, with a proficiency in big networking and data center space, right? Yep. Yeah, and sorry, Joe. Go ahead, man. I want to give you.
No worries.
Intro, but I want to give you a second to talk.
Sure. Joe Cram, CEO of Solid Networks. I grew up in Silicon Valley and product of Central Northern California. Swore I'd never work in technology. Found myself at age 25, certified in a few technologies, and here we are 22 years later, supporting primarily mid-market clients. However, in the last decade, we added SMB managed services as well. So kind of a pretty wide breadth of clients.
You got to change with the market, right? That's the only way to survive. So absolutely. And that's going to be the cadence for most of the sessions here at CCS. We want to make sure that we're not only getting thought leaders, visionaries, key insights from professionals in the industry, but we want to pair that with the people who are actually executing these things, right? It's not enough to say we should be doing these things, but we want to marry practice and theory. So Joe's here to say, hey, Jay, what you're saying is on the money. I absolutely agree with you. Or, with all due respect, I'm here to call out bullshit if he hears it, right? So, and I don't expect there to be a lot of that, but we definitely want to get practice and theory. And with that, Jay, why don't you get us started, man?
Sure, and he's in California, and I'm in Southern Florida, so there won't be a physical fist fight, but a virtual one may ensue. So this is the age of Zoom, and we'll go forward with that. So thanks for having me. And I do wake up every morning, trying to gather as much insight around the trends and the news of the day, and obviously the broader COVID, and then broader to that the changes that are happening, 18 months to 3 to 5 to 10 years from now that MSPs should have their eyes on. If you start at the very, very top, if you look at businesses and governments around the world, they spend $3.6 trillion on tech. And so I always like to kind of start there, and 64% of that today goes through the channel. And that goes through VARs and resellers and MSPs and MSSPs. But there's a growing channel, and we're looking at millions of companies kind of flooding in. So on one side, 81% of accountants are now doing tech services. 78% of marketing agencies are now doing tech services. So you've got this, every company in every industry is opening up to tech services. On the other side, the cloud has driven a new economy or ecosystem of partners. where aggregators and brokers and consultants now number in the hundreds of thousands. 10 years ago, we had 10,000 software companies in the world. Today, we have 175,000. And 10 years from now, that's going to be 1 million. So that's kind of the software world. If you look at emerging tech, IoT, AI, automation, blockchain, drones, all the way down the list of the top emerging technologies, there's now 800,000 companies that are doing some level of technology services. So it's not this game anymore where, you know, there's a certain set of partners and that's who the customer listens to and everything goes. We're looking at all these millions of moving parts and perhaps every company in every industry becoming a tech company and what that means. And looking at a future where, you know, tech services isn't as cut and dry or linear as the way we once thought. So I'll be talking a lot.
I want to stop you there, Jay, if you don't mind. And I did put a poll up here in the channel, you know, asking, are you, for our audience, are you concerned with the getting more competition from other industries, right? We've seen that. I see exactly what you're talking about, the finance, the copier companies. Everybody seems to offer, Office Depot offers managed services. Joe, I want to get your insight, man. And when you're doing sales and marketing, you know, when your teams are out there trying to bring in new clients or your existing clients, are they getting that from, are they saying, hey, my CPA is offering IT services now or tech services?
So the types of clients that we're focused on, it has not been an issue. Clearly, there is sales pressure and, you know, it does provide potentially some different pricing items. You know, you will see where a large cable provider offered $35 all-in managed services. And so, you know, for a second, there were some concerns that would that erode, would there be a race to the bottom? You know, ultimately, if your services are differentiated well and you see the value, it has not yet been an obstacle. However, you know, as Jay mentioned, seeing industries, you know, managed print was kind of the first to do it. They've been doing managed services longer than we have. So, you know, when some of these other organizations, some of these other industries get it right, there absolutely could eventually be pressure, you know, based on that.
Yeah, we're seeing in the poll, we're seeing not so much concern. People are seeing it, but only 38% are concerned with that that competition, that pressure, like you said, from ancillary industries. That makes sense. That makes sense what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think one of the big reasons for that is, you know, these companies, again, your accountant or your digital agency or even a cloud consultancy and stuff are not coming in at the true infrastructure layer. Like they're not coming in full force on hybrid computing and how to set up this model, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud kind of model. They're coming in higher up the stack. So we do know in the cloud, you know, which really 20 years ago started and then 10 years ago started to really accelerate, the cloud economy, 65% of cloud decisions today, you know, whether it's a business application or something further up the stack, is made outside of IT. So the head of finance and the person who's had, you know, that relationship with the head of finance for 100 years is the CPA. The head of marketing, which in many companies, the head of marketing now spends more money on technology than the head of IT. And so as that head of marketing is piecing together 8,000 different logos on the MarTech stack, you know, in many cases, the digital agency, you know, which 50 years ago was the Mad Men advertising agency, you know, 10 or 20 years ago, they're helping you set up a website and getting you some SEO and front page stuff. And well, all of that has become somewhat commoditized and the margins are all threatened in that area. So they technology delivery. There is no managed services, by the way. It is all project-based, and it's today 75% margins. And again, it kicks off a lot of technology services. For every dollar a marketing leader spends on technology to a company, they'll spend $5 in services. And that's where, you know, this battle is for these dollars. And no one's trying to manage the servers or the PCs or the endpoints and the security and stuff like that. It's not an infrastructure conversation at this point.
So I want to stop you there, and I want to, to say there's no managed services, they're only projects. That's probably the most terrifying words I've ever heard in front of a managed service provider audience. So, Joe, what's your take on this?
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow. As we've been trying to turn our projects into a service. Everything as a service for sure. We have seen some similar parallels in operations, where we had a large client who the operations department made an ERP decision not through IT, it was made in operations, and the cloud services, the hosting provider, all of that came as part of that application project. And so the 5-year operations of it behind the scenes was a line item in a project.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and when I say it's not yet. So if you are a student of history and you watched, and I was with IBM for 17 years, during the 80s into the 90s, as client server really kicked in and customers felt the total cost of ownership of client server, and it was very, very tough to manage. So about 10 years later, it took about a decade for the managed services industry really to kick off. And I ended up working at Autotask for a while, and I was very much on the front end of that with all the RMM companies and PSA at the time, clamoring and building these communities. And then obviously over the last 20 years, managed services has become what it is today, with 50,000 managed service providers around the world and almost $186 billion under managed services contracts. So that's the timeline. So the cloud, I mentioned, 20 years ago, Salesforce.com got its start, but you really go back about 10 years when Azure and AWS and Google, started to pick up infrastructure and platforms, and you see the acceleration. And we're going to come in within the next 5 years. You're going to start to see the management around multi-cloud environments and something that's predictable and in a recurring revenue model. And we're going to figure out more and more cloud services that will tuck into our managed services practices. But customers today, and I'm going to say north of 90% of them, making these cloud decisions, like the ERP example, are very much in a project mode. And you have to compete in that mode to earn the right to make something repetitive and repeatable in front of that client. And probably 20 years from now, you're going to see over half of cloud services, maybe 80% of them, in managed services contracts. It's just going to be that predictable, but not yet.
So, Joe, I want to pick your brain here. Talking about those projects, right? How many of those projects you're doing are coming from MSP clients, and what percentages are coming from clients that aren't MSP yet, right? Hopefully they will be. Do you know that breakdown?
So, we're probably not the norm. We focus our project services on existing managed service clients. So we start with a managed service of some sort, an augmented co-managed service in a mid-market client. From there, we do projects, and at the end of that project, we then follow on with an ongoing managed service to maintain and operate that environment. Not all, that is a conscious decision on our part to chase projects only in managed service clients. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case for us. 10 years ago, most of our projects were done with clients that we did not have ongoing support contracts with.
I'll go ahead and put that poll in the audience. So, where are most of your projects coming from? Are they coming from managed clients or non-managed clients? Just so we can see where everybody's coming from.
There is an industry number there, where if you look at all of small and medium business and all of mid-market, really globally, but more so in the US, where managed services grew much faster than other regions, 21 to 23% of all customers outsource some or all of their IT. So they've got over this hurdle that, hey, for example, security is there's 7 layers of security. Now with the remote topology, given COVID, it's beyond our capabilities and our capacity to protect ourselves. So therefore, an MSSP or an MSP that has a security practice is a great option. Infrastructure-wise, I don't know too many clients that actually can do IT for cheaper than an MSP can, and more efficiently and more productively. That being said, there's a human psychology here that is at play. And by the way, that number, the 21 to 23%, hasn't really moved in 5 years. So we're hitting a little bit of a plateau in terms of what the kind of the comfort feeling is. The almost exact same thing happened when I worked at IBM. If you'll remember back in the days, like early 90s, mid 90s, we thought all of our jobs were going to end up in India. And all these big Indian system integration firms started hiring hundreds of thousands of people. Even IBM started shifting, so much of its employee base into. So we thought at some point that, oh my God, we're all going to be outsourced. And it never happened, because at the height of outsourcing, and when IBM built this huge global services, it ended up being 23% of enterprises outsourced some or all of their IT, where 75, 77% didn't. And that number never rose again. It plateaued, and it's actually been dropping, since then. And in managed services, the same thing. It's never going to hit 100%. As things get more complex, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and putting together all the infrastructure pieces, I can see the number, growing at a linear basis. But we can't think of our city, town, territory that we cover and start thinking of knocking on every door, because it's just going to be, a double sell, selling ourselves as a great managed service provider, but then selling managed services as well as the right business model. And as those of us that have grew up in sales, trying to sell two things at once is always really, really difficult.
So when it comes to that, what's the catch? I mean, is education the key thing? Are you finding the clients are more educated already in what they're shopping for, or do they still need to be educated on managed services, so you don't have to do that double selling? Now you can just say, I'm the MSP, I'm awesome. You already know what managed services are.
Yeah, from what we're finding is obviously the clients are getting much, much more intelligent, and at a line item level, at a pricing level. This is why we've seen the price consolidation that we've been, experienced the last couple of years. We've had some bottom feeders that have come in, and somebody mentioned a cable company that, is offering $35 a month or $50 a month. And last week, Lenovo came out with one. The week before, Microsoft has its managed services, and every company seems to have its new managed services backbone in there for, some set fee. So, the market is maturing. It's consolidating. The prices are compressing. You can go over to Service Leadership and Paul Dipple, or to Gary Pica and some experts in this industry to actually get what the roll-up of all these P&Ls look like. But, we have a quarter of MSPs that struggle to break even in the best of times. And this is just the environment we're in. We're in a 20-year-old mature market now, where the best of the MSPs are, engaged in M&A and rolling up and growing successfully, and even growing in double digits during COVID, where you've got the bottom 25%, which are at risk of bankruptcy. The next 25%, if this prolongs COVID into mid next year, which we're predicting, are also going to be in a tough situation. So, this is a natural evolution of an industry, and 50,000 MSPs with 550,000 VARs behind it might be a little bit over distributed, and more powerful, more successful VARs. And I'd love to get Joe's opinion and your opinion in terms of this is what we're seeing is a market that's just maturing.
So is that the role of the VAR? I mean, Larry's going to talk on this in another session, but is that really the role of the VAR, to make sure that the MSP succeeds, or that their partner succeeds via, whether it's IDF, MDF, or whether it's, some kind of, joint marketing programs, education pieces? I mean, because it is completely lopsided, right? For every one MSP you see 1,000 VARs or 1,000 vendors. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. Are those vendors, where do they fit? Joe, you seeing that? I know you're a big Cisco shop, right?
The last decade has been very interesting. A decade ago, there was considerable manufacturer vendor interaction, and today that has significantly shifted to distribution. Unless you are moving $10 million of product, or have a very large relationship with a single vendor, most of the time managed service providers are being supported by the distribution channel. In regards to marketing assistance and internal training and potentially some list building, there's definitely a lot of great community, as Jay mentioned, things like service leadership, things like the event that you're doing here today, helping to build awareness and mature some of the smaller organizations. I do agree that you will continue to see M&A. M&A has really taken off, not only inside of the managed service industry, but the clients we serve. The number of our clients that are merging, that are being acquired by larger industry is taking off as well. So it's not something that's completely isolated to our industry. It's across the board.
And talking about that platform shift, it seems like you can't read anywhere without seeing the term MSSP, right? Managed Service Security Provider, or Managed Security Service Provider. You can't go anywhere without seeing that. And we're seeing MSPs kind of shift that way. So we put the poll up. Lisa Compton asked the question, are we seeing MSPs moving to that? Joe, I want to get your opinion on if you see, if you guys are considering moving to that model, if it's consideration. Jay, I'd like to hear your opinion on, does it matter? Does it move the needle, right? Does it really affect your role in the the MSP's role for the client? So Joe, we'll get you first since you were last to talk.
Sure. Our role is to become part of internal operations for our clients, whether we are the complete IT department or whether we're augmenting an IT department. So things like compliance and certain security services, pen testing, stuff that's like red team activity, best served by an outside entity. We, from a growth perspective, I feel to truly tag yourself with, as an MSSP, you need to have a internal staff 24/7 doing active threat hunting around the clock. I do see a little bit of misuse where people cobble together a few products and call themselves an MSSP. And, I think there'll be a pretty clear differentiator of true MSSPs. Consolidation, M&A helps with that. As organizations start to support multiple cities, multiple regions, they can have the bandwidth and the manpower to staff around the clock and have security engineers working around the clock. I find most MSPs do not even have traditional operational help desk around the clock. So making a jump to being an MSSP, they're better served by finding a master MSSP to take that functionality for them and help them be successful. But time will tell where that goes.
Absolutely. And Jay, I know I asked you another question. I'm going to preface it first with a question Lisa put up. What percentage of, since you're the numbers guy, what percentage of MSPs do you see moving to the MSP model? And then again, my second question was, does it matter, right? Does it affect the overall business?
Yeah. So number one, I agree with Joe 100%. So, MSSP, whatever works in a Google search engine is great. Any company at any time can pick up a moniker, pick up a label, and pretend. It's putting words on your website, maybe cutting and pasting your words and putting them back on their website and their social posts and stuff. But, the customer will decide in the end with their dollars, if an MSP is truly an MSP or an MSSP is, truly delivering that value. Today, we recognize about 5,000 global MSSPs, which is about 10% of the 50,000 MSPs. That being said, there's over 10,000 MSPs that I would put in the category of having a mature security practice that if they wanted to label themselves an MSSP, it's a crossover. So those are the numbers, but does it matter? And the answer is yes. So we survey hundreds of thousands of customers, and we're really interested right now about the future, about we're getting into the second stage of COVID. In the triage stage, 72% of MSPs saw an increase in business in March and April, getting this new remote topology in place. Well, as we're getting into August here, the second phase is, now I have a bunch of consumer laptops going through a consumer network, through a consumer router that you share with your neighbor, trying to get access to enterprise grade data. Oops. Now it's the risk, the compliance, the security, and there's 7 layers of security. It's not just at the endpoint. There's a physical layer. I talked about sharing with your neighbor. There is an application layer, a web layer, a data layer, network layer that all becomes important in this new remote topology. It's the number 3 area of spend coming out of COVID. into the second phase. Number one was around automation, which is for those MSPs that have looked into robotic process automation, RPA, as a tool. It was the fastest growing technology in the last couple of years. BPA, business process outsourcing, business process automation, those areas. But SaaS, every SaaS tool today, the 175,000, have automation. They have business rules inside, they have workflows, they have processes. So there's a bunch of work to be done, mostly in the line of business, around automating, this human failure that we had for the first time in over 100 years, which is sending everyone home. Second big opportunity is around cloud acceleration. I talked about huge growth of Azure at 59% year over year coming into COVID. They're still growing. Microsoft just announced, I think yesterday, 13% growth, which is incredible given that computers are down by 17, telcos down by 16, tech consulting and system integrations down by 15. Anything growing positively right now is a big opportunity. And the infrastructure platform and SaaS layers are growing, albeit flat to slightly growing, but in a world that's dropping by 17, bright spots. Number three is this security, risk, compliance, these conversations about building out the environment and this remote topology, which we think that 70% of people may return back to normal cubicle farms and 30% will stay home. Google just announced yesterday that they now have people at home till July of next year. And other companies are going to start, even Forrester is asking us when we're comfortable to come back. And so this whole new remote topology, like client server and like cloud, presents an opportunity for MSPs. We always know where there's mystery, there's margin. And this changing of the industry actually plays very well into an MSP and an MSSP's business model.
So I want to stop there. We did the same thing March 15th before our county advised to do it. We just said we're going to work from home. And, thankfully as a telco and an MSP, we were already poised to do so. It wasn't a big move for us, right? We had remote employees anyway. So we did so very gracefully. And I will, while I call on Joe, I will say anybody in the chat, if you want to join, talk about your own work from your transition, if you went to work from home with your staff, I'd love to hear from you. But as we were discussing coming back, I made the comment to Michelle, my wife and CFO. I said, I'm fine if we never go back to the office. It sucks. We have 3 offices, leave 2 of them, we'll rent them out or something like that. But, I'm good with keeping everybody work from home. We did ask, and it was about a 50-50 of the employees that wanted to come back because they needed that community kind of thing going on. And there were the other half that they were fine. They were good. And we found it we also found it as an age divide. The 20 to 30s, the 20-year-old to 30-year-olds wanted to stay working in the office with each other. The employees that were 30 and above, almost without exception, those are the ones that were fine working from home. And they didn't need that immediate contact. It was very interesting. Joe, did you guys have to displace? I know California is also equally hit hard. Did you?
Yeah, it was that same second week of March. We went from optional work from home to mandatory work from home. For us, at the beginning of June, things started to lift. We started to shift back. Had a handful of people, very similar to what you were seeing, that really wanted to come in. And then it has, as we are now experiencing a little bit of a second wave, we're back. Things have swung. I think there's 3 of us here in the office today. We are seeing what the water cooler conversations right out of the gate. We were doing happy hours on Friday, and people were interacting very socially through. We use Teams very socially, through our collaboration platform, and that's drifted a little bit. So, figuring out how to maintain that culture. We had a pretty strong in-office culture.
You share pictures of your office. You have DJ speakers. You have the what is it, double or triple tap beer station, right?
We got a beer on tap and a pool table and a workout area and all the Silicon Valley kind of things.
And that's especially hard, right? We're not talking about a stuffy corporate office where you have a bunch of cubicles and either go in or go home. In a business where company culture is so important, right? Where you have, spending time with each other. The companies, because our company is very much like that too, right? We have the in-office gym, we have PlayStation, we have all this stuff in the office specifically for spending relaxation time or collaboration time with each other. So to take that environment and work from home, that's tough, right? That's really tough to do.
It is, and trying to figure out how the team will stay connected. There'll be new ways to motivate. Figuring out how to maintain that culture is going to be an absolute challenge. We have had to terminate one individual that just could not transition from an in-office environment. He needed to be directed, didn't have the self-direction. The majority has been, has worked really well. But what worked in 2019 definitely is not the same recipe for culture success in 2020.
So what happens to those people, Jay? What happens to those people that are struggling, because it is a certain type of personality that can work from home, right? There's those of us, sales has no problem working from home. I've never met a salesperson that couldn't do it. We talk about the stereotypical, network geek, lab geek that, he or she loves just sitting at their computer in a dark room with Cheetos and Mountain Dew. Those people are fine, right? The typical antisocial, but there's plenty of us that do need that personal interaction. Do you find that shaping the way these companies are held together, shaping company culture?
Well, it does, and it goes deeper than just the bag of Cheetos and your cat on your keyboard and stuff like that. But today as a seller, you need to be a digital seller. You have to be very familiar with social selling, for example. You have to be very familiar with jumping on Zooms day and night and here and there. But I'll just go back to the vendor side. You asked this question earlier. We are looking at 10,000 vendors today that have channel programs. So the average MSP out there, that there's a bombardment. There's 2,000 security companies that are knocking on your door trying to get you to carry their product and to integrate your product into your managed services contract. So you're getting knocked on 10,000 times. And if you go back and think about how you brought on a new vendor, because maybe 10 years ago you had 10 vendors, today you have 20 or 30, and the numbers increasing as the complexity increases. But you start to think back, a lot of my research is about communities. As an MSP, what do you read? You actually read 54 magazines, you listen to 64 podcasts, you may be a member of 24 associations. There's these 10,000 vendors, but there's a few large vendor communities. Talked about ConnectWise and Datto and Kaseya and SolarWinds and all the way down Datagate and all the way down the list of great vendors who are building these communities. You've got distributor communities, Ingram and Tech and Synex and D&H. You've got thought leaders and different peer groups. You think of the work Arlen Sorensen with HTG, now part of ConnectWise, but Marketopia and Robin Robbins and Carl Polachuk and all these, Harry Brailsford. There's 31 communities of thought leaders that MSPs plug into. And then before COVID, there was 150 events per year that an MSP was invited to. So you could go to an event every 2 days on average. So I'm actually fascinated and obsessed over spheres of influence. I actually published the 100 most influential people, the people that do the most keynotes, that are in the front cover of the most magazines, host the most podcasts, that are on the board of the biggest associations, and where are the people that are really driving the future of managed services. And it's not a vendor knocking on your door with a cold email. It's the people you trust. It's out of the 300 emails we all get every morning, it's the couple that you actually click into and read. It's the podcast that you listen to in your car when you're out for a walk. And that's where vendors, out of the 10,000 vendors, that's where the battleground is to influence the influencer to get to the MSP and to get into that conversation and to get into their world. So this is the part that I'm fascinated with, and I love the personalities that we have in our industry. I love the communities that we have and all of those different numbers. There's 99 LinkedIn groups, there's 25 Facebook groups. That MSP subreddit is actually the most popular, not at the owner principal level, but the people doing the work.
Well, as a moderator of that Reddit, I appreciate that. We have 76,000 members and growing, and we have 27% of that group is active month after month,
It's
which is high for a group like that.
And every day I work with companies like Cisco, like Microsoft and Dell and Lenovo and all the big ones. And I say, just drop into that Reddit, search for your name, like cover your eyes and ears because it's going to be unfiltered. Some of it's anonymous.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you really want to understand, not what the owner principal's telling you, who has a, double-edged, reason for to be a partner and wants to get paid, but actually the people out installing your gear, implementing your gear, integrating your gear. Go talk to them and go into those subreddits.
And that's the big thing, the community engagement. I mean, we've seen almost every vendor we have on this, every sponsor we have at this event today or this week, they are huge on community engagement. Ninja RMM was doing weekly sessions and now they're doing bi-weekly. I've been on with them a bunch of times. Datagate just did a webinar last week. Every one of them is huge on community engagement, and their Cronus Cyber Foundation will be speaking Wednesday or Thursday. They're in our Discords, they're in our Slacks, they're talking on a regular basis. You have to grow a thicker skin because not everything's going to be positive, and especially it's the internet, right? The only thing positive is kittens. Everything else, take it with a grain of salt. But if you're open to having those conversations, you do so much better. I want to ask you, is there a risk of becoming numb, becoming desensitized to all these events? Because if there were 150 last year, now with all the virtual things, right? Channel Partners is going virtual, IT Expo is going virtual, Inspire was virtual, everybody doing virtual, and the barrier to entry to virtual is so much lower.
Yep.
We were able to put this on at a cost of, maybe 1/50th of what it would have cost us if we did it in person, and able to get much more attendance equally. But at what point do we get numb to those, right? How many webinars, how many sessions can you be on during a week before it's hearing the same stuff over and over? How do you differentiate?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing because, by the way, much of what I just went through in terms of the magazines and associations, they live off of events. There is no more advertising anymore. Their entire business model. So when you can get 1,000 people to an event in Vegas or a larger event, that actually kicks out $1 million in profit. So if you ever wondered, all those booths that we set up, the 10 by 10s, those companies are spending $25,000. Once you take away all the hotel and food and everything else, it actually rolls up to actually a reasonable profit. And if you can get multi-thousands, 2, 3, 4,000 people into an event like Channel Partners, that's a multi-million-dollar, and it provides probably the majority of their income for the year. So now if you're going, and I'm keynoting Channel Partners, and many of the people in this community are engaging there as well, but if the fact is if you can see this and it's not original content, and if it's not something new, and if it's something you could have got on a webinar last week somewhere else, or got on a podcast somewhere else, you're going to grow a little bit numb, and there's not going to be this excitement. Because when you get on an airplane and stay in a hotel and get together in the hallways and the hotel lobby bar, that becomes such a big element of the event. And I think we're going to get in the future what we'll call hybrid events. So I want them to be digitally recorded. And when I go to an event now, I don't want to look at the agenda and sit there for 8 hours and listen to speakers. I want to spend more time in the hallways, more time with my community, more time in the hotel lobby bar. And I'm going to sit through the keynote. I'm going to sit through a couple of key people that I came to listen to. But I want to spend at least half of my time with others. And I want to watch on the airplane home, catch the stuff I missed, or in the podcast, or on the drive home, whatever it is. And that's this new hybrid idea that I need the thought leadership of the people that I really trust, my influencers, my super connectors. But listening to them live may not be as important as connecting to my peers, connecting in the community, getting the chatter, getting the kind of the inside scoop.
That's exactly what I was talking about this morning. It was the real magic happens in the hallways, right? It's when you can go grab a drink with somebody or go sit in one of the alcoves and have a conversation. It's not a tagline for us. The tagline of the conference is socially distanced, always connected. It's because we miss those personal connections. I'm seeing Corey saying amen. It's true. We need that. We absolutely need this. So I did put a poll up just because I'm curious as to, everybody else, are you numb from all the online stuff? I personally love these things, and I'm seeing 66% no, which is good because we can't all attend all of these things, but the engagement's important. while I call on Joe real quick, I'm going to ask Keith Nelson. You prompted a question. I want to see if you want to join on video and ask your question live. So let me know in the chat if yes or no, and we'll get you on. But Joe, on the networking side, on the conference side, are you tired of these virtual sessions yet? Are you tired of the webinars?
You know, absolutely, there have been days where it has, I'm part of the ConnectWise Evolve community, and doing a, multi-day 8 hours on video isn't the same as, the in-person event. The big part for me, because I was local and because it was time zone shifted, when the event ended at 2 p.m, instead of retiring to the hotel room, have a few minutes to process the day and really reflect on what transpired, I hopped right back into my email, started making client-facing calls, and so it didn't stick as well. And so I do think there is, I'm coming up on, yet another quarter of events, and I'm going to treat it a little differently. Even though it's virtual, I'm going to respect the time afterwards, reflect, stay on Zoom and try and connect with the people in my peer group. It takes discipline.
Yeah. Are you letting your staff do the same? Because I notice, I'm involved in it. I'm the CEO. I don't have free time, but I can move my time around to attend a lot of these things. Jay gets a pass. It's your job to be on top of all this stuff, right? But for our staff, they should be doing admin, billing, operations, finance, tech, service delivery projects. Are you letting them tear away and say, this is important, I want you to watch this, once a week or once every other week?
So I'm a big believer that every leader in the organization should have both a peer group that they interact with and a mentor that they can work with outside of our company. I've also believed quite a bit in giving them time to self-develop. And so I think, giving them that option provides for a great work environment for them, provides a great result for the end clients. So yes, we're absolutely have been giving them that. I have not seen a significant shift from the way getting an echo there, from the amount of time that our team had spent prior. But I do think for organizations that are considering it, especially in these interesting times, allowing people to attend more of these online events. I will say this year we had quite a few people attend a ConnectWise event a month ago that in comparison to flying them into Florida for a live event. It's a 2 days of downtime just traveling back and forth. So there is definitely an opportunity both in the attendance cost and in the travel time cost to get higher participation.
I'm a big fan of that career development, personal enrichment, getting the employees to build up. We build OKRs around exactly that. Like, it's not just, I don't want the person that's been doing the same password resets for 5 years to be the best password reset person in history. I'm not interested. We routinely tell our staff, if you have the same skill set next year as you have now, that's not of worth to me. That's a failure on all our parts. My job is as a mentor and as a leader for our team, and their job is they should be growing. And that's the one good thing I can say, because there's so many events and because most of them are recorded. We can say, okay, we're going to carve out time. So for your personal enrichment this week, you can take this hour to watch this or that. It does make it a tad easier.
I would say the one benefit of the recorded events, I've historically, Murphy's Law, I would attend an event that I thought was great, and the next year I would send a large number of people, and it was kind of a fizzle out, kind of a dud. With recorded events, I'm now able to invest my time, identify the ones that add value, and then have them attend recordings. So
and I will say, that's a huge value, right? I mean, IT Nation, I love IT Nation. I've been going for years, and IT Nation last year, I was just not paranoid about it. I was anxious about it because it was over Halloween, and I have a family. I have a 7-year-old. I have my 20-year-old. I have my wife. We have family here. We have a lot of family here. We have stuff Halloween every year. It's my sister-in-law's birthday. And I was very reticent about actually going. I'm glad we did. We had a phenomenal time. We ended up just we said, okay, well, if I have to pick and choose, we're just going to take everybody. And we ended up taking nearly the entire company with us, and friends and family, and rented some houses, and it was fun. But this makes it much easier. The virtual stuff does make it much easier to do. Keith, we have you on video, and besides having the most awesome beard, the ZZ Top beard, what you would call it, you asked a question about community, and ironically, or not ironically, Keith, I know him from Everything MSP, one of our sponsors in our bi-weekly or twice a week webinars. But you asked a question about communities, and I didn't want to misinterpret it. Keith, can you restate your question? Keith, did I lose you?
What I'm really asking is, I see this problem in MSPs, and Ray, by the way, that's Everything MSP is really the only group I'm ever active in. So I'm not really a group guy. I go to like 1 or 2 events a year. I see a real problem with commoditization of the MSP business, especially when people use sales coaches, where people are presenting, and I go this competition, you're just reselling the same thing, or packages the same thing, which then I think forces your customer to consider you as Kmart and just put out the blue light. So I think there's a balance, and I just was curious on how you guys do it, between keeping your own identity, which is what you actually hopefully sell to your clients, and using packaged or industry standard, or even the term MSP. That's kind of a coined phrase. I don't think it really even has a definition. And so, because my fear is once you get into commodities, you get into pricing pressures. So I was just curious how you guys balance that.
And Jay, you touched on that, right? You said, sorry, Keith, I'm going to mute you because I think that's where there. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Jay, you talked about it. You talked about the pricing compression, right? It's now, is it because of the commoditization of MSP? I mean, we hear so many times, differentiating and better service, faster service, more personalized service. You can only hear that so many thousands of times, right, before you get numb to it. But at the same time, every MSP says the same thing. How do I differentiate myself from the next person? Either it's because I'm more educated, or because I'm more experienced, or because we have different tools. Is that a reason for the price compression? Is because everybody's the same? And if so, how do they not be the same? How do they get outside of that?
It's a good question, and we watch it quantitatively. So, years back, we watched an average MSP contract of $147 per person per device, whatever the setup is of that MSP globally. And now, I think the last research I saw from CompTIA was $113. And so there's compression there over the last 5 years. You have Joe Panettiere, who set up Channel E2E just to track the M&A activity and a lot of the private equity roll-ups that are happening, which don't get confused by private equity. They're capitalists. They don't know about, or they don't care about managed services. They care about their yacht that's floating, out in the New York harbor. So there is, money to be made here. And these roll-ups, you can be, if the average margin on that $113 today is 17%, if you roll it up and roll up into a headquarters fashion, all of the finance and operations and sales and marketing, and keep that 8-person MSP as all truck rolling delivery technician agents, it's a highly profitable game for somebody who does that roll up. But to compete with that roll up as the person across the street who has to do all that administration and leadership locally, it's much tougher at 17% to do all that kind of stuff. And that's where you get the consolidation as connected to compression. But every industry, across finance, across pharmaceuticals, goes through these areas of consolidation and compression. It's just a natural part of the industry. The question for you is, am I going to compete at 113 with good enough services, maybe differentiated enough so I win against, the guy across the street? Or do I break out of that and become more of a high value leader, and I'm going to charge whatever I charge, 125, 150, 200. It's different by geography, it's different by industry, it's different by buyer. Can I find a different part of the market that's more profitable? Or can I do that main part of the market more profitably or differentiated? Or, as I said, there's an element now that's just racing to the bottom, that's cutting and pasting our words, putting it on their website. There's big corporations. I mean, you dropped Office Depot as a name, but everyone has dabbled in this. Staples did this. Best Buy did this. Everybody's thinking about this.
$25 a user or something ridiculous. It's
and it's that's thinking about this at the element of can we drive this price to zero?
And that's the funny thing. That's the funny thing I see, because the easiest and fastest way to differentiate yourself is make yourself more expensive. You just get that psychological impact immediately of, oh, they might be better because they charge more. We did that in our MSP. We were traditionally 165, 170. Our active MSP clients today, we don't take new ones, but our active MSP clients today are 180 to 225. And I'm happy to be above that level because I'm not competing with those 125 or 115 guys. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's 5 minutes before the close of the session. Joe, I want to get your thoughts real quick on this. You've been around long enough. You've seen the tides change. Has your pricing changed much? I mean, to hear 147 to 113, I don't know any MSPs that's lowering their prices. What are you seeing, dude?
No, obviously costs are going up. People are unemployment in the tech sector has been extremely low, especially in our part of the nation. Verticalization, building business expertise, not just technology expertise. To be an infrastructure plumber and do the same thing as everyone else, definitely you're going to get squeezed. Picking certain industries and diving into that line of business app, working on those integrations between applications as more and more applications start to hit the market, and understanding how that works, what works in a specific industry and what doesn't, definitely helps you differentiate and stay top of stack. You can't just be faster and more technically proficient. You have to develop an understanding of business and learn to communicate and sit at that table, not just the tech table. And,
I've talked about this 1,000 times over, and I apologize for, the people who've heard me say it, but it's more about picking your client than it is about, being better than the other guy. If you define who your client, we always went after somebody that's been in business 5 years, somebody that's going after industry, achievements or speaking in circles, somebody that's actively advertising, somebody in a regulated space. We had this clearly defined set of clients we would go after because they knew they'd be happy to pay the increased costs. They understood the MSP model. They wanted to focus on their business, not on running, doing password resets. They wanted to outsource these things, and that allowed us, made it much easier for us to go sell. So we're at 12:28. Jay, I want to give you, final words. Anything you want to leave us? I will say real quick, I apologize to everybody. They loved your numbers. They loved your stats, as we all do. Jay did ask me if I wanted him to present a PowerPoint, and I said no. I wanted to talk. Jay, if you would do us a favor, if you want to share that PowerPoint, I'll make sure it's available for download for the people so they can still get those, because you've had some amazing numbers. But Jay, anything you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Yeah, I think the title of the thing was the future of MSPs. We've touched on it a number of times. I mentioned 65% of cloud decisions now are happening outside of IT, but they're also rich decisions. They may or may not be managed services today. They're really not. But the average margin of the average Salesforce deal, for example, is 75%. Doing the implementation, integration, security, compliance work, the stuff that we know how to do, is triple to quadruple what we're making on a traditional managed services contract. So there's something to be said about engaging with new buyers. When Joe mentioned verticalization, today that's across 5 vectors. It's not just the 297 sub-industries and making your business intelligence there. It's the different kind of buyers. Again, 65% of them are outside of IT. It's number 3, the geographic expertise that you can build. Number 4 is the expertise around the sector, segment, and size of customers. And then number 5, there's 26 layers of the tech stack and 200 layers below that. I mentioned 7 layers of security. You can become an expert. If you multiply all 5 things together, it's 35 million market opportunities. And I'll tell you that those aren't being filled today. It's a lot of greenfield. And where you elevate your margins, where you elevate your business success, is, moving into those places where you can dominate and go get 80% share of.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And, Jay is active on social, his socials, his community engagements are in his profile. Follow him, learn from him. He has amazing information. Jay, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having you on here. I appreciate your insights. Joe, anything you want to share with us before we let you go?
No, I appreciate the invite, and I look forward to the rest of the week.
Guys, the conversation continues. Take this next hour, go visit our sponsors, network in the lobby. Our next session is V41. I will be on there with Marissa at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Jay, Joe, thank you guys so much. Pleasure having you on. And like I said, we'll share that PowerPoint later on. Have a good day, guys. Take care.
Thanks.